She hatched in a cradle beside a sickly prince, and she saved his name before she ever saved his life. She was silver, she was small, she was beloved. And one afternoon, above a dark lake in the Riverlands, a shadow older than her dynasty fell on her from the clouds, and she became the first of her kind to die by the jaws of another. Welcome to Westeros Within, where we journey into forgotten ages, hidden legends, and ancient mysteries. This is Dragons of Westeros, Episode 4, Quicksilver, the first dragon to die to another. In the year 7 after the conquest, on a cold island in the Narrow Sea, Queen Aenys I Targaryen gave birth to a small and crying child. The boy was frail. He would not take the breast of any wet nurse. He coughed. He wept. The maesters of Dragonstone feared he would not live out his first year. And then the whispers began. The crueler voices said what cruel voices always say about sickly princes. That this boy was no son of Aegon the Conqueror, that the blood of old Valyria did not run in him at all. For if he were truly the blood of the dragons would have loved him. And the dragons had not. So a clutch of eggs was placed in the prince's cradle, as had been the custom of House Targaryen since before the Doom. One of those eggs cracked. What crawled out of the shell was pale and bright, with scales like moonlight on a cold lake. She did not wail. She did not flee the noise of the crying child. She crawled straight to the infant in the cradle and curled against his warmth, and the prince stopped weeping for the first time in his short and troubled life. As the dragon grew, so too did the boy. The whispers ended that night. No false son of a singer had ever drawn a dragon to his crib. The realm had its answer. The hatchling would be called Quicksilver, for the way the light ran across her scales like liquid silver in a bowl. And the prince would be called Aenys, and he would one day wear a crown. They grew up together on Dragonstone, the gentle boy and the gentle dragon. She did not fly to war. She did not hunt wild herds across burned valleys. She was raised in the quiet after the conquest by the hands of a prince who loved music more than blades and who wanted, above all things, to be loved back. When Aenys flew her over the villages of the Riverlands, the small folk came out to cheer. No fire fell, no roof burned, only the silver shadow passing above them and the voice of their prince calling down a greeting. When the peace with Dawn had held for 10 years, he flew her across the Red Mountains to Sunspear, and her claws touched no Dornish sand in anger. When Aegon the Conqueror died, it was Quicksilver who carried his grieving son east across the Reach to the funeral pyre. She was a peace dragon in a world still learning what peace could mean. For 35 years they were bound together, boy and beast, king and mount. And then the faith rose against him. The Sepps called his children abominations. The warriors' sons took up their stars and swords. The poor fellows filled the roads, and gentle Aenys could not crush them. He had the will of a man who wanted to be loved by everyone, and the men who hate you most cannot be won with love. He fled to Dragonstone with his family, and on that rock where his dragon had once crawled from her shell to save his name, he lay down in a fever no maester could cool, and he died. Quicksilver was 35 years old. For the first time in her life she had no one. Into the empty throne stepped his brother, Maegor, the Iron Son of the Conqueror and the Dread Queen Visenya, the man who had already claimed Balerion the Black Dread. He took the crown, he drove out his nephews, and in the dragon yards of the Red Keep, the silver dragon of the dead king paced alone, while the Black Dread slept above her in the dark. A year passed. Quicksilver waited. Far to the west, a boy was waiting too. Prince Aegon, the eldest son of Aenys, had been 16 when his father died. His mother, Alyssa Velaryon, had smuggled him and his sister-wife Rhaena to Casterly Rock, and there she had declared him the true king of the Seven Kingdoms. The realm began to call him by a name the histories would never forget: Aegon the Uncrowned. He was a prince without a dragon and a king without a crown. But his father's dragon still breathed in King's Landing, and his father's blood still beat in him. When word came that King Maegor had ridden to Old Town, Aegon saw his moment. He and Rhaena dressed as common folk. They climbed into a mule wagon piled high with sacks of corn, and beneath those sacks they lay still and silent as the cart creaked through a gate of the capital at first light. The prince and princess of the Targaryens rode into their own stolen city hidden under a peasant's harvest. They went straight to the dragon yards. Rhaena found her dream fire, the pale blue she-dragon she had ridden since she was a little girl, and Aegon walked alone to the silver one. Quicksilver lifted her head. She watched him come. She smelled Aenys in his blood, in his step, in the shape of his hand when he lifted it toward her. She had carried the father through every long flight of his life, and now the son stood before her with the father's face in his eyes. She accepted him. He climbed onto her back for the first time, and together with Rhaena and Dreamfire, they lifted off the rooftops of King's Landing at dawn, silver and pale blue rising over the Blackwater into open sky. It was the last time Quicksilver would ever fly for joy. Aegon raised his banners in the Riverlands. 15,000 men marched for him, from the Westerlands and the Trident. He declared himself the true son of the true king. And Quicksilver carried him above that army, her silver shadow sweeping across the grass as they marched east toward the capital he meant to take back. They never reached it. Royalist hosts closed on him from three sides. A wall of spears waited on high ground, and a young prince without a captain's experience could not find the gap. He mounted his father's dragon to break the center from the sky. And above him, out of the southern horizon, came a shadow the size of a mountain. Balerion the Black Dread had come. Maegor was on his back. The Black Dread had melted the towers of Harrenhal into lumps of stone on the very shore of the lake they were now fighting above. And now his ancient wings darkened the water of the God's Eye, and his shadow fell across the Isle of Faces, where the old gods watched from their weirwoods. For the first time since the doom of Valyria, dragon turned on dragon in the open sky. Quicksilver climbed to meet him. She did not flee. She did not refuse the battle. She hurled her pale white fire at him in bright, quick bursts, silver light against a mountain of black flame. Her fire was swallowed. Balerion answered with a torrent of black flame that drowned the silver, and on the bloody fields below, thousands of men lifted their faces to watch a thing their grandfathers had only heard of in the stories of the Freehold. And then the Black Dread climbed above her. He folded his wings. He fell on her like a cathedral dropping out of the sky. He seized her throat in his jaws, and he ripped one wing from her body, and the silver wing came away in a spray of blood and torn membrane. Quicksilver fell. She fell with Prince Aegon still on her back. She fell above the weirwoods of the Isle of Faces. She fell above the melted stones of Harrenhal, where the fires of her killer had first written their name into history. The Silver Dragon and the Silver Prince struck the earth together, and they both died on the day their rebellion died. Below them, the army broke. 2,000 men were cut down in the rout. Maegor himself was carried from the field grievously wounded, and from that day forward the realm would call him Maegor the Cruel, for no man had ever before killed his own nephew from the sky. Quicksilver's body was never recovered. If she fell into the waters of the God's Eye, she may lie there still, near the roots of the Holy Island, silver bones beside the oldest watching trees in Westeros. She had been born in a cradle beside a sickly boy. She had grown gentle beside a gentle king. She had waited a year for his son. And she had climbed into the sky against the oldest dragon in the world and had not turned away. A peace dragon raised in a war-shaped world. The first of her kind to die to another. Everything that followed in the long red history of the Targaryens, the dance of the dragons, the red sowing, the slow and awful ending of the species, all of it begins in the moment. Balerion closed his jaws on Quicksilver's throat above the god's eye. She was the beginning of the long fall. So tell me this, would you have climbed into that sky beside Aegon the Uncrowned, knowing what was waiting on the southern horizon? Write it in the comments. And if you want more stories from the Dragons of Westeros, the silver ones and the black ones alike, subscribe to Westeros Within and join me for the next chapter. Because next time, we follow the dragon who lived 2 complete lives. The pale blue she-dragon, who was the childhood companion of a hunted princess through the terror of Maegor's reign, and who, decades later, became the beloved of the gentle Helaena. A dragon who knew the softest Targaryens of 2 different centuries, and who, on her final day, broke the chains that held her in the dark and brought the great dome of the dragon pit down on the heads of the men who came to kill her. Her name was Dreamfire, and when she rose that last time, King's Landing itself shook beneath her wings.